Do you ever wonder why autistic people just seem kind of weird to you? If you're a neurotypical person, it might seem to you that autistic people are just a bit off somehow, even if you can't quite put your finger on why. And if you're an autistic person, you might have spent years perfecting your mask, trying to blend in, and yet sometimes someone comes along and still sees right through it. So what's really going on here? As an endlessly ruminating autistic adult, that's what I'm going to be discussing today. I am also perilously close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so please keep watching until the end because I have some details of a giveaway that I'm going to be running. But first, a disclaimer. Now, I might use the words weird, strange, or odd in this video. These might be words that autistic people have grown up hearing, have been bullied with, or otherwise identify just a little bit too strongly with. So for the purposes of this video, think of them as my interpretation of the neurotypical perspective, meaning
you're not like us, you deviate from the norm.
That's what I mean when I use these words, and they aren't intended as a judgment towards autistic people, not at all. You guys, I'm autism positive, I love you all, and I love me too, and we're all fantastic weirdos. Right, so let's talk about thin slice judgments. This is a term in psychology used to refer to judgments that people make very, very quickly, within a matter of seconds, typically based on a quick visual assessment. Think about the information that you can receive in that time. It's body language, posture, eye contact, facial expression, dress sense, grooming, presentation. All things that autistic people are known for being a little bit different with. And granted, you can make a lot of good guesses about someone from this information. Think class, social status, weakness as in whether they're ready to be picked off the herd, whether they spend a lot of time on their appearance, maybe their values. But of course you get very little information about what lies beneath the surface. Their situation, beliefs, struggle, intelligence, loyalty, kind of the important stuff. So when potentially the majority of people are making these thin slice judgments about others very, very quickly, where does that leave autistic people? By nature of our neurology and often our physiology, we are responding to stimuli from the world and often internally all the time. Responding to things that neurotypicals may not notice or even care that much about. Grounding ourselves in reality, self-soothing or self-stimulating, getting bothered by the clothes that we're wearing, or the chair that we're sitting on, or the lights that are flickering, or the subtle electrical noise that we can hear that no one else can. You know the effect they often use in horror movies where they focus on these minute details like a tap dripping or static or something like that for the chilling atmosphere? That's what life is like for a lot of us autistic people. We're always noticing, sensing, feeling, and a lot of our strange movements or expressions come from us trying to deal with that situation. Whether it's to soothe ourselves from it or try to block it out because we want to concentrate on what you're saying. We might not be sitting still, we might be fidgeting or distracted, our eyes might not be quite looking at you when you're talking, which can be unnerving to a lot of people. Creepy, weird, like there's something not right about us. There's a concept that you might be familiar with called the Uncanny Valley. This was coined in reference to robots and AI, and this is how Wikipedia describes it. The area of repulsive response aroused by a robot with appearance and motion between a barely human and fully human entity is the Uncanny Valley. The name captures the idea that an almost human-looking robot seems overly strange to some human beings, produces a feeling of uncanniness, and thus fails to evoke the empathic response required for productive human-robot interaction. The Uncanny Valley hypothesis predicts that an entity appearing almost human will risk eliciting cold, eerie feelings in viewers. Now let's just pause a minute here. I am in no way suggesting that autistic people are not fully human. There is a long and awful history of dehumanizing disabled and autistic people, and that's absolutely not what I'm trying to say here. What I mean is that neurotypicals who make these thin slice judgments will often find that an autistic person doesn't quite measure up to their idea of normal. Or this person might convey the message that they are other, even without meaning to, and sometimes despite trying to mask, to blend in, to seem normal. This is very much applicable to the high-functioning, verbal, masking autistics, because we spend so much time and energy trying to fake being one of them. But even we can't get it right all the time. If you are a pro-masker like me, and to be honest, I'm not even sure whether this is something to be proud of or not, you will have flown under the radar of most people. You've been taking part in espionage. But But mostly when I'm tired, the mask will slip. Suddenly I'll not feel like looking at people in the eye, and my automatic mirroring framework will over or underperform. I'll start to give off these little tells that can immediately make someone notice, hey, you're not one of us, are you? I've had this experience a few times before, and it seems to be getting worse as I get older, actually. I'll be introduced to someone new in a group setting, and this person will immediately take a dislike to me, instantly. It's so obvious to me, as I'm very sensitive to the emotional states of other people, but it tends to make me feel really paranoid because other people don't seem to notice what just happened. You know, it gets to the point where I've known this person for 30 seconds and they've already physically turned their back on me and blocked me out of a group conversation just as I was introduced to them. And I understand it's because of a certain perceptual confusion. When you expect body language and facial expressions to read and present in a certain way, when you meet someone who defies those conventions, you know something isn't quite right. Now, if you're watching this, chances are that you're either autistic or very open and familiar with the concept of neurodiversity in general. If you're not, I really suggest that you check out some of my other material. And I do think that this is something that can be learned. Some people are more open to perceptual differences and different behaviours among people than other people might be. I don't know whether this is necessarily a prejudice thing or just maybe more of an awareness thing. For people like the woman that I met who sort of blocked me immediately, I reckon that it's also part of the uncanny valley of the violation of human norms. Let me read some more from Wikipedia. The uncanny valley may be symptomatic of entities that elicit a model of a human other but do not measure up to it. If an entity looks sufficiently non-human, its human characteristics are noticeable, generating empathy. However, if the entity looks almost human, it elicits our model of a human other and its detailed normative expectations. The non-human characteristics are noticeable, giving the human viewer a sense of strangeness. In other words, a robot stuck inside the uncanny valley is no longer judged by the standards of a robot doing a passable job at pretending to be human, but is instead judged by the standards of a human doing a terrible job at acting like a normal person. The more a robot resembles a real person, the more it represents a challenge to our social identity as human beings. I relate quite a bit to that last section. Obviously, autistic people fly on my lens. Obviously, autistic people are not robots, although the stereotype about us not having any empathy just won't seem to die. But if you take this excerpt and think about it in terms of autistic people rather than robots, we are living in a world where we are assumed to be neurotypical and therefore judged on those standards. Imagine if there was great public awareness about autism and autistic people, and saying, I'm autistic, hi, when you first meet someone, although you might say other things first, would lead that person to think, oh, okay, they're autistic. I guess that means they might act a little differently from what I'm expecting, but I'll probably just have to try a little bit harder to get to know them. Or I need to change the framework within which I'm making my judgments about them. Wouldn't that be nice? I appreciate that this scenario is kind of a pipe dream. It's probably never going to happen. But isn't that something that we could work towards? Whether masking or not, autistic people do and think and process things differently. We are a threat to the neurotypical way of conducting social interactions. I wonder if we show them how shallow a lot of it really is. But we're never going to change. We can't. You know, these intensive therapies like ABA promise to make your autistic child normal again. But all they really lead to are autistic adults who go on to develop PTSD and trauma from being repeatedly corrected and being told that they are not good enough, they are wrong, they are broken and need to be fixed. The autistic way of interacting is not a broken way of communication. Studies have shown that when neurotypical people are together in the same room, they communicate just fine. But when you put a group of autistic people in the same room together, they also communicate just fine between themselves. The difficulty comes when you have autistic and non-autistic people trying to communicate with each other. And the viewpoint is always that it's the autistic person who has the disorder. But if we communicate just fine within our own kind, you can't argue that our communication is actually impaired or disordered. Like, two wrongs don't make a right. Two people who are terrible at communicating can't magically communicate, can they? So maybe we're not actually wrong. Maybe we're not as bad at communication as we have been led to believe. In the society we live in, autism is considered a disability. The neurotypical world is set up in such a way that when autistic people try to contribute, we are literally disabled by the social barriers that have been put up. But maybe it's not the autistic population's job to fix this problem. If you're not autistic, think about the ways in which you create barriers for us. If you have authority or power in any way, think about what you could actually do to make the world more accessible. Maybe you're a manager and you might reconsider phone interviews or mandatory team building exercises. Or you just have maybe a social privilege, you're popular and people like you and look up to you. And therefore you have the opportunity to influence others by your action and inclusion. I have a platform now on which to speak. I am able to amplify my voice now so that more people are listening to me than ever before in my life, really. And that's a huge privilege, but we can't do it on our own. We are a small minority in the population, and we need to get through to everyone that it is everyone's responsibility to understand and accept autistic people for who we are and how we act, even if we're strange. We are weirdos, we are oddbods, we are strange, we are autistic, and we are proud. Let me know when I should put that on my merch, guys. So I promised to let you know about a giveaway that I'll be running. It will be over on my Instagram, so please head over and follow me there. It is at YoSamdySam. And make sure to keep your eye out over the next few days because I will start it when I have reached 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube. If you're into autism, here's a playlist you might like, and here's what the algorithm has selected for you. So enjoy them, and I will see you next time.